Recording. Okay. So the last assessment here is actually a Google slide instead of a Google Doc like most of ours have been. What we're going to have you do is a little bit of research on a modern, meaning an organism that's alive today, and a fossil organism, which is a animal or whatever that's been dead for quite some time. So there's going to be differences and some similarities between those two, the modern and the fossil. That's kind of what one part of this is looking at for sure, is being able to describe those similarities and describe those differences. And that's kind of where our rubric comes in. You choose a modern organism you would like to learn more about. We've got some ideas on the next slide that I'll mention here. Research using Google to find a fossil organism that is related to it. So something you might try typing into Google for that is, what is a fossil organism related to whatever your modern day thing is? And I can show that Google search here and how we can kind of find some decent sources to use, or know if what you're reading is worth looking at and reading. And then follow the directions on each slide to complete the assessment project. So I think there's mainly like 4 slides, I think, that you got to do something on, and it tells you what to do on each of those slides. But otherwise, we're looking for, can you identify similarities and differences between modern and fossil organisms, which are the yellow slides. And then there's a slide where you're explaining some stuff, meaning explaining how the similarities support or tell us that the ancestral relationship between modern and fossil organisms. So you're pretty much going to be trying to explain how you know that your 2 organisms are related to each other. Okay. Now, if we go to some of the ideas here, Mrs. Froman and I came up with a list of what looks like 6 different things. They're all mammals, well, almost all mammals. There's birds, which to me, birds means what are all birds related to, not one particular bird. So you would say we have this modern group of animals called birds, and what did birds kind of descend from or evolve from, or however you want to word that? What are they related to in the fossil record? Horses, we'd be looking for what's a critter in the fossil record that horses are related to, like what did a old common ancestor of horses look like a long time ago. Same thing with dogs, like where did dogs come from? Elephants, dolphin, porpoise, whale, swimming creatures. Technically, dolphins and porpoises are pretty closely related to whales, so you could lump them in there. And then cats. Now, only other thing here to mention is you may choose one of the following, but if there's something else that suits your fancy, feel free to do it. Just know that if you can't find a decent fossil record, or you find an article that has a sentence or 2 on the ancestor, you're probably not going to find good information on that critter, and you might have to pick something else, because they just might not know, especially on some of the random obscure things that they don't even know much about the living organism. You're not going to find anything on a fossil organism either. I'd say it would be much easier if you stuck with the animal kingdom. So that could include things like reptiles, snakes, lizards. It could be possibly like fish, but all the ones that we chose are things that we're probably all pretty familiar with without having to do any research to begin with. So, any questions on how to pick your organism? So then the first slide is pretty easy. All you're doing is saying, I'm going to do birds. And then you go to Google and you type in something like, what? How did you word it? I can't think apparently right now.
I don't remember how I did.
Okay.
Organisms related to.
I guess, what are some? And you hit enter and stuff comes up. To me, I don't know how Mrs. Froman feels about Wikipedia, but I'm cool with it. There's some teachers that are, or professors usually in college, are like, never use Wikipedia, but I'm fine with it. Otherwise, like if you get any of these .edu or Khan Academy is a good one. That's usually videos though. PBS would be fine. I mean, magazines would be fine too, I guess, but they might not have a whole lot of sciencey information. They might just give you some ideas of things to Google. Like apparently there's this thing called Archaeopteryx. You might want to look that up then too. Okay, so I know .org, PBS, .gov, any kind of Wikipedia would give you some places to go to and probably has decent information. I know I've heard about studies that they've done in Wikipedia, even though you can modify it, anyone can go on and modify it. It's more accurate than the hard copy encyclopedias. They're kind of an ancient thing of the past now. Okay, so that's kind of what you're gonna look for. This will get you some good places to start. If nothing else, it might give you some good websites right away, but otherwise you could find things to Google again, like a critter's name that you find, and then you can look that up. So that's kind of the way to get the modern and fossil organism there, is go to Google and find some critters. You're probably potentially going to find more than one fossil organism. My thoughts on which one you should pick, because you only need to do one, and you should only do one, is pick the one that you find the most information on, probably.
Yeah.
Otherwise, moving on past that, so you're going to have a slide, one on similarities, one on differences. Notice that it just says find 4 major differences or 4 major similarities. So things that are the same, things that are different. That would be another thing to think about when you're picking which fossil organism to do. If you have one that you can't find 4 similarities and 4 differences, see if you can with another one that you found. And if you're having trouble with any of this kind of stuff, like you can't find 4 similarities or 4 differences, feel free to reach out. But when you do, it would be very helpful for Mrs. Froman and myself if you, whatever one you click on, if you copy and paste the URL for the source that you're using and send it to us in the email so we can actually look at what you're looking at. Otherwise, it'll just be kind of a crapshoot and we won't really know how to help you. Okay. Okay. So I guess this one. Those are the first 3 slides there, which are, in my opinion, kind of fairly simple. It's just find an organism that's related to your one that's still alive and compare them. So how are they similar and how are they different? And then the last slide here is where we would be writing a little bit more. So this would be more of an essay where the other ones are just kind of lists, in my opinion. So this is where we're going to kind of do something that's sort of similar to what we've done on almost all of these assessments in this unit, is explain how you know that this organism that's alive now is related to another organism. So we're gonna talk about, go back to these similarities and explain how the ones that you listed here let you know that the critter that is still alive is related to the one that's no longer alive. How you know that they are kind of in the same family or group, or they gave rise to that group of animals, things like that. Otherwise, only other thing that I'm not sure I mentioned completely is it's similar to what we've had in other quizzes. Just we're not looking for one sentence kind of stuff here. Just give us a little bit of detail. 100 words. You can highlight stuff if you haven't done it at this point. Ooh, tools. Where's the word count? I think you can do it on here. I thought it was in tools. Well, when in doubt. Document. I don't want to do that. They might not have one in here, weirdly. But if you're really worried about it, to me, if it fills up at least half of the box, you're probably at 100 words. But you can always just copy and paste it into Google Docs and do it that way too, because I know it works in there, but apparently it's not an option here.
Yeah, so we're looking at probably at least 5 to 7 sentences.
Yeah.
Get you at least getting close to that 100 words.
And remember, I know when I was grading the last quizzes on the different arm bones of humans, cats, whatever was on there, probably one of the common things is people kind of just compared them. Like they said, well, this one is like this, and it's different in this way, when they kind of miss the whole point of this is supporting this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't use words like this is related to this because, you're probably not answering the actual question. You might just be restating what you did here.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you use or reword kind of the question is a good way to think about it. Kind of has some big words here, I guess, but ancestral relationship just means how are they related to each other, or they are related. Modern and fossil, living organism, old dead organism, that kind of stuff. So otherwise, I wonder if this posted. Are there any questions at this point? Because that's pretty much what I had planned to talk about. Did you have anything to add, Mrs. Stroman?
No, I think you covered it. Just
Okay.
make sure you're using good comparisons.
It has posted now.
Oh, that's good.
I moved it to the top, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's what that does. So otherwise, you have what is it today? Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to work on this. Not that you'll necessarily need all that time, but hey, you got it. So might as well use it or spread it out, do a slide or two a day, something like that.
So that means we're expecting pretty good quality because you have all this time. So do a good job.
Yep. So I'd say you should attempt to pick an organism first and do some Google searches. If you pick one of the ones on our slides, you're pretty guaranteed to find a decent chunk of information on them. If you want to go off on your own, just make sure that you can find 4 similarities and 4 differences. You should be good.
Yep.
So Otherwise, if there's nothing else, I can stop videos. I'm going to do that. Stop it.